All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we are going deep on a guy, a man, really a legend,
Absolutely.
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, you know him.
His president.
Wild. Duels, battles, political drama.
The whole thing.
It's like an action movie.
Yeah.
But it's real. So to guide us through all this, we're going to be using the American History Tellers podcast episode on Andrew Jackson.
It's a good one. Really paints the picture of...
Oh, yeah. So our mission today, to figure out this guy, Andrew Jackson.
Right.
War hero, president,
Right.
slave owner, ruthless expansionist, all of it.
And really understand his impact, right? I mean, he's
Yeah.
all over American history.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
We're talking the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Right.
America's just finding its feet.
And this is where Jackson grows up.
Yeah, turbulent times.
And his childhood, man, tough doesn't even begin
Oh,
to describe it. Revolutionary War, loses his family, actually gets
Yeah. I mean, talk about formative experiences.
scarred by a British soldier.
This shapes the man he becomes.
That's intense. And this fuels, like, his lifelong hatred of
Oh, yeah.
the British.
He just carries that with him.
And then there's the dueling.
Oh, the duels.
It's crazy.
Larger than life, right.
So he's already a lawyer, politician,
Rising star in Tennessee.
making a name for himself.
Big time.
And then this duel with Charles Dickinson.
Dickinson. Crack shot. Known for it.
So Dickinson shoots first, hits Jackson in the chest,
Near the heart, too.
near the heart, and then
Most people would go down. Right.
what does Jackson know?
But not Jackson, no.
Stands there, takes aim,
Cool as a cucumber.
and kills Dickinson. Just like that.
One shot. Reputation cemented.
Tough. Uncompromising.
But there's always another side of the story, isn't there?
Right, right. Some say Dickinson's shot
Yeah. Something
was intentionally low.
aim to wound, not kill.
Which makes you wonder, was Jackson's shot justified?
It's a question that follows him.
Yeah. This blend of grit, determination, and then this willingness to operate
Yeah. Yeah, he's not afraid
in the gray area.
to get his hands dirty.
It's a theme we see again and again.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it comes into play big time. during-
Okay, so then what about the Creek War?
Oh, that's where things get really messy.
All right.
You've got American settlers pushing west, clashing with the Creek, who are trying to hold on to their
Yeah.
land, their way of life.
It's a collision course.
Yeah, in the middle of it all,
They got it.
you got it. And he shines.
But at what cost?
That's the question, isn't it?
So you have the massacre at Fort Mims, hundreds killed, settlers, Creek allies.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
And this becomes Jackson's rallying cry, right?
Well, yeah. He wants revenge.
He leads his troops to Horseshoe Bend,
Decisive victory.
turning point in the war.
A turning point, but
Yeah.
a lot of blood spilled. The Creek, they called him Sharp Knife. They knew what he was capable of.
So he wins the war, then forces the Creek to give up millions of acres.
Millions. A pattern emerges here, doesn't it? Expansion through force.
Okay, so how much of this violence, these early battles, you think shapes him as president?
Oh, I think it's impossible to separate the two. These experiences, they forge his worldview. Decisive action, even if it's brutal, becomes
Right.
his way, his path
Yeah.
to what he sees as security, success.
And then, of course, the War of 1812, national stage this time.
This is where America really tests itself, and Jackson's right in the thick of it,
So remember that story we started with?
about saving the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. Washington, D.C. burning.
Chaos, uncertainty. That was the reality of the War of 1812.
And the British are blockading, they're interfering with trade, they're
Impressing American
they're
sailors.
forcing them into their navy.
Right. Impressment. And at first, Jackson's told to
Disband his troops.
disband his troops. But what does he do?
Well, he's Andrew Jackson. Right.
He marches them home.
Earns him the nickname Old Hickory. Tough, resilient, defiant. And that defiance, man, that's going to be a hallmark of his leadership.
For better or worse.
So while he's marching home, what's happening?
A Treaty of Ghent,
Mm.
signed across the Atlantic. War's officially over. News traveled slow back then. Before word reaches America, there's one more battle to be fought.
The Battle of New Orleans.
The one everyone remembers.
So this guy, this war hero, Old Hickory,
Right.
a guy who plays by his own rules, how does he become...
Well, it's the
Well,
political scene back then. Think about it. This old system,
Right.
all elites and backroom deals, It was crumbling.
Yeah.
People were hungry for something different.
And that's where Jackson fits in.
He's the perfect storm. He's this self-made man, champion of the
Mhm.
common people. At least that's the image.
But he's also wealthy, a plantation owner,
Right. He's not exactly
Right,
a
yeah.
commoner himself.
and a pretty savvy politician. I mean, come on.
Oh, absolutely. He knows how to play the game.
So he's an outsider, but also an insider.
Yeah, that's the key. He can connect with the everyday folks
Okay.
who feel ignored, but he can also work the system.
And that nickname, Old Hickory,
Oh, brilliant. Makes him relatable.
makes him seem like one of them, right?
Exactly. One of the people,
Yeah.
not some out-of-touch elitist.
So he loses the first time he runs, right?
1824. The John Quincy Adams.
What happened?
Controversial election. Went to the House of Representatives. Jackson and his supporters,
Okay.
they cried foul.
Yeah.
Accused Adams and Henry Clay, who supported him,
Oh, yeah, Henry Clay.
of a corrupt bargain.
So was there a deal, or was it just, politics as usual?
Hard to say for sure. But the perception of a rigged system,
Yeah.
that fueled Jackson's message
Yeah.
and set the stage for a rematch.
Okay. So 1828, round two. And
Phil-
it's
Oh, it got ugly.
ugly.
Personal attacks,
Yeah.
mudslinging. Jackson's wife, Rachel, dragged through the mud.
That's rough.
He blamed the campaign stress for her death just weeks after he won.
Wow. So,
Tragic, really. But it also plays into his image, right?
yeah, this fighter battling the elites.
The people's champion. And this outpouring of sympathy for Jackson, it shows
Yeah.
how much public opinion mattered now. The power of the press.
Okay, so 1828, Jackson wins big.
Landslide. A new era in American politics. Jacksonian democracy.
So what's that Jacksonian democracy?
Power to the people. Limited government. Westward expansion.
Yeah.
Rejecting the old ways.
Okay. And how does he put this into practice?
Well, for one, the spoils system. Rewards loyal supporters with government jobs.
That sounds kind of corrupt. No.
By today's standards, sure. But back then, it was seen as breaking the elite's grip on power.
Okay. And then there's the Second Bank of the United States.
That was a big one. Jackson saw it as a tool of the wealthy, a threat to the common man. Vetoed its charter, pulled out government funds, caused a huge financial crisis.
But also showed he wasn't afraid to take on the establishment.
Exactly. And these moves, they were controversial,
Oh, yeah.
but they show his deep distrust of centralized power, his belief in a limited federal government.
And yet, when it comes to westward expansion, treatment of Native Americans.
Well, there's that contradiction again, right?
Yeah, his actions don't always match.
He talks about individual liberty,
His word.
but he's a firm believer in manifest destiny, America's right to expand westward no matter the cost.
And that leads us to the Indian Removal Act of 1830.
Yeah, a dark chapter.
Yeah.
Forced relocation of thousands of Native Americans from their lands.
Their homes, their lives, everything
A
uprooted.
trail of tears,
Mm-hmm.
disease, starvation. Thousands died.
It's hard to
It's a stain on American history.
reconcile that with his image as a champion of democracy.
Right. How do we square those two things? Was he a product of his times, or did he actively shape those
Okay.
policies? Tough questions.
Questions we're going to keep asking as we look deeper into his presidency. We've only scratched the surface.
So it's like this constant back and forth with Jackson, right? Limited government.
Yeah, it's real.
But then he uses federal power to get what he wants?
Puzzle, isn't it? He takes down the bank, but then forces Native Americans off their land. What about slavery? I mean, that was the ye issue,
Slavery.
tearing the nation apart.
That's where things get really complicated, even for a guy like Jackson.
Yeah, so he's a slave owner himself, right?
Deeply tied to that Southern economy.
But he also knows a divided country is in trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with South Carolina threatening to secede
Right, the tariffs.
over those tariffs. Talk about a powder keg.
So crisis brewing. What's Jackson going to do?
Well, he's not one to shy away from a fight, is he?
Steps in, full force of the presidency.
Our federal union, it must be preserved. That's Jackson in a nutshell.
Wow, he was
That's not going to let the country fall apart.
like messing around.
But his solution, authorizing military force against South Carolina if they don't back down.
So states' rights
That's a powerful statement.
are okay, except when they're not.
It highlights this tension, right, between his beliefs and his actions.
I mean, it seems pretty hypocritical, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it exposes this deeper hypocrisy, I think, at the heart of America itself. This nation built on freedom, equality, but built on slavery, too. That contradiction, it's going to keep simmering until
Until the Civil War.
Yeah, Just a few decades later, it all boils over.
So we're seeing the seeds of that conflict.
Right there in Jackson's presidency.
Right here, right now. Slavery, states' rights, the power of the federal government.
He's wrestling with these huge, fundamental questions that define America.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on Andrew Jackson, why does any of this matter today?
Well, for one, it reminds us that history, it's not simple.
Right.
It's messy, full of contradictions. Even our heroes, they have flaws.
And Jackson's a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Inspiring, troubling.
He forces us to confront some hard truths about our past. And that tension between ideals and reality, we're still dealing with that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just some dusty old story.
No.
It's still relevant. Race, equality, the role of government, using force. These are all things Jackson dealt with.
And these things, they continue to shape us.
Yeah.
His story makes us think critically about how we remember the past.
Okay.
Who gets to be a hero? How do we deal with their flaws? And what can we learn from them?
Wow, so much to think about. Okay, so we've been through it. Andrew Jackson, war hero, president, slave owner.
A complex figure, to say the least.
A legacy that's complicated, challenging, and definitely still relevant today.
Absolutely. We encourage everyone to keep thinking about what we've talked about today. What surprised you? What questions do you have? Because history, it's not just dates and names. It's about understanding ourselves, our choices, and using that knowledge to build a better future.